Short for fanatic is the one who's screaming their lungs out in sub-0 degree temperatures, still believing when the chips are down, and never, ever giving up on their teams or their players. From the closest seat to the worst one, we want to meet you all. This is the American Fan.
What's going on, sports fans? It's your boy Josh Williams, back from Denver, back from Game 2 of the NBA Finals.
The Mile High.
We'll talk about that in a second. We're back with another episode of the American Fan 365 podcast. We have a huge guest, a legend in the game. We'll be introducing him shortly. He's in the green room right now. He's chilling in the green room lobby. But before we do that, I want to definitely introduce our co-host, Miss Rosine, the front row. How you feeling today?
I am feeling so good after watching that game last night, and I am. I woke up with a pep in my step because of today's guest. So I'm more than happy, and I'm blessed.
Love it. I love it. Love to hear you're blessed. And the bearded one, George out here. He's already got the Miami vibes. I'm going to Miami. George, how do you feel?
I feel amazing. Hey, heat, baby.
Heat, baby. Heat, baby.
I'm one of those fans that's definitely, if I lose in the playoffs, I'm cheering for that team to win the championship.
Okay.
Like, I've never understood the opposite thought process.
I have when it's football and it's in our division, but I am rooting for Jimmy M.F. Butler, all right? I just, and, for me, I love a David versus Goliath story. And right now, who would have ever thought in the beginning of the season that we would be talking about a Heat Nuggets finals, right? Josh and I were touching on this, and we've spoken with this with you too, Georgie, about how neither of these teams are big market. I mean, Miami is a medium market, yeah. But Denver has never been. Have they been to the finals? They've never even been to the finals.
No.
So I love it, and this is a David versus Goliath story. You have a team that sweeps the Lakers, right? And then you have the Miami Heat, who nobody gave a chance against. Well, I knew they were going to beat the Knicks. Nobody gave them a chance again. It's true, though. It's true. They beat the Milwaukee Bucks, and then they beat the Boston Celtics, who were the two front runners. I had one of those teams winning it all. And so when you have the Heat without Tyler Hero, with a bench that I don't know if they're consistent, but then you have one of the, in my opinion, one of the greatest coaches that will coach, with Eric Spoelstra, but and then Jimmy M. effing Butler. I mean, what a story! And now, so last night when they won, I had to give it to all those people that are mostly Knicks and Celtics fans that are like, the Heat don't stand a chance. He's about to get swept. How's that sweep go?
Not looking too good at all. And also Victor Oladipo not being there.
Yeah.
But and this was one of my trivia questions for the people in Denver was the Heat. This is actually the first time in history that an 8 seed won a 7-game series. Because remember, the Nuggets beat the Sonics in '94 and 5, and then the Miami Heat actually went down to the Knicks in '99 and 5. Right. So this was the first time that an 8 actually literally beat a 1 head up. So you can't take it away from them. But I don't want to keep our guests waiting any longer. Listen, this is a legend in the game. He has seen it all. He has done it all. And we are truly honored to welcome Mr. Sonny Vaccaro. Sonny, how you doing today? How you feeling?
Well, I'm doing much better than I did 5 minutes ago because I'll finally be on with the two of you. I'm excited to talk to anyone. But when I see people who have the same motivation as I do, and what is it? The athlete being more than an entertainer, the athlete being a leader in everything they do because they're watched by so many. As Ro pointed out, you have an affinity for somebody that you may not have ever met or whatever. And Jimmy's story is certainly good. And all the athletes, and there are situations that we all know happens around are people who lead the world vicariously. We all pretend we can sing like somebody, we can act like somebody, but we're not that somebody. So we need that somebody of that group to encourage us to want to do something. So I'm excited to be here and listen to what you two have to ask.
Man, that's
Oh
that's
my
a
God.
great entrance. That's a great.
I mean, I'm beyond myself that you even considered being a guest, and so the fact that we're actually speaking with you means a lot to the both of us. And you spoke about passion, and that's the thing. That's what separates. I think that that's what separates people from most, right? Do you have a passion for what you do, and are you realistic about it? But I don't want to be realistic about anything. To me, sky's the limit, right?
Yeah.
And you embody that. So again, thank you for coming on. And did you watch last night's game?
What I do is intermittently watch. I like to get everything at the end of the day because I'm connected to whoever's playing. I'm at a point in my life where I'm not rooting because I work with somebody or they wore our shoes or I knew them, they played my game. I'm to the point of wanting to see the athlete continue where they started from, almost non-entities, especially the basketball players, which I am involved with. So, Ro, to answer your question, no, but I keep to date. My wife interrupts me and tells me someone's winning or losing at a certain time. But what I'm hoping for, and what I've hoped for since I got out of being personally involved with the kids and the people representing them, is the sense that we as a group, men and women, more progress in the job they chose than any other industry in the world, if you want to be honest about it and go to a different level. And this is what I'm seeing as I get older and see more things. What I've seen is the athlete is now a partner with the people that basically hired them to begin with. And that to me is a major, major thrill.
I love it. I love it. And yes, before we go any further, I have to give a special shout out to your wife, Pam. You mentioned her. Pam is the architect behind everything. And before we move on to all these books behind you. So you said you've read at least a paragraph of each of them. So tell me some of the books that you got behind you, Sonny. What's in your library?
Well, you know what? Let everyone you can imagine having to do with sports or the NCAA, but basically the ones over here, when you're looking at Andrew Carnegie, when you're looking at D-Day, Truman, I am a very, very, I don't understand how to say it, illogical person, someone to have thought that would be interested in one book that moved me, and one incident that moved me, and for your audience, when I was young. And when I was young, there was no, cell phones, there was no Instagrams, there was nothing. News took a year to get from one coast to the other. But the two instances that helped frame my mind as I got older were the Diary of Anne Frank and John and Tommy and Peter from Australia, and with the black glove. And I say that to your audience, and I say it to the two of you, is that your mind is complicated when you're very young. Your mind has no idea. And when you had the advantage of growing up when I did, as this generation is having in all new things, those are in, you learn the best way you can self-learn is to read or to pay attention. And so I've tried to do a lot of things like that, and they've worked well for me basically, Pam and I have been singular people since we've been married now 39 years, and she's younger than I am, and we've experienced what has happened in sports. Because I'll just pick this up. But as far as you asking me, any book that you think, I got Arthur Ashe back there. That there are no children here. I got all these different things. So I don't want to go in specifically, and I'm not trying to prove anything. Those two instances in my life self-taught me. And Les Miserables, that's the famous musical. And I want to say this because I love music. That's my first passion. Les Miserables is a tale of two cities.
Yes.
And that's when the big fights and all that. And Victor Hugo writes a book. And for whatever reason, because I didn't read the tale of two cities, it was 2000, just like the Bible, right? But I read pieces of it. And what has stuck in my mind for you and your audience, not to bore them, let's go back to sport, was what happens when individuals grow together as a group and believe in themselves. They can fight back whatever the negative was at that time. And I believe that I'm at the end of, I'm 83 years old. I'm at the end of the rope. I tell Pammy, and she doesn't like when I say it, I'm playing in extra innings right now, but I get the last bats. God's given me the opportunity because what you've seen and, going into O'Bannon and hopefully there's a couple more things after that. I've watched it. I want you guys to go a different direction because it makes me uncomfortable. But I want to tell you something. This could be the greatest time or the worst of times for the athletes, because right now the athletes, because one reason I'm going to say this up front is if you watch the movie Air, Michael Jordan is more than one of the greatest basketball players, because I'm not one to believe in GOATs, because I believe any athlete in any generation is the GOAT of that generation. It's very hard to tell me someone's better than Wilt or Kareem or anybody. But as you go along, who's not to say that LeBron was, right? If he'd have won this year, they'd have had a big damn argument. But this kid, Victor, okay? Victor's got a chance from everything all my guys tell me. So what I'm saying, but what Jordan did for your audience, he made the athlete part of the whole thing. When you watch what Michael did and you pay attention, he not only made zillions of dollars he made zillions of dollars for athletes to be a part of their owner. Now, I say that very loosely, and you can interpret it whatever way you want. But Michael took away, and it took 40 more years because LeBron and these guys are just getting a piece of it now. They got shoes after them. But marketing is what created it. And after we're all gone, that shoe will still be here. Michael's great-grandchildren, but in 2099 or 21, remember that, the song 25, 25, if we're still alive, you two guys too young. Remember they take you through 5,000 years and the world changed.
Yes.
You get to 55, and there's no more world. Well, after listening to and watching all this, artificial, they're gonna make human beings now. We don't have to do nothing. We're gonna create ourselves. I'm making fun now, but that's how much we've progressed. But Jordan and this particular movie shows you what you can do when you bond together. And, everything is Shaquille's done in business, Magic's done in business.
Yes.
LeBron, look what LeBron's done in business. They're making their own movies. Players are now owning teams. There was times not too long ago when they couldn't play on a team, or there was a number on the players that could play on a team.
Yes.
I mean, sports is the only thing in the world that is supplied by people who aren't involved with the mainstream of life. They weren't the guys that did this or did that. They entertained us. We looked at them and we quoted them from the beginning, from the English did it when they had amateurism in the 1800s for golf and tennis. They immediately went to the Queen, and Queen said, "There's nobody better." But so if you're not good or bad, we're going to say you're not an amateur. And that amateur word crossed over to the NCAA, and they stole that word, and they stole the lives of thousands and thousands of athletes by just keep telling them they can hold them back because they're amateurs. I don't know what the hell that meant. So ask me another one. Can I just keep talking?
No, I love it. And actually,
I love it.
You bring up a big topic. Let's talk a little bit about NIL and the lawsuit that you and Vegas local Ed O'Bannon brought against the NCAA to the government, and now how that kind of paved the way for NIL. Do you like NIL? And kind of what are the steps do you think are going to make it better?
I love the NIL, and there's no question in my mind. It changed the marketplace. The kids had to do it. Let me say to your audience, before Eddie said yes to me, after I got Michael Housfield affirmed to even think about it, the next thing I had to do after convincing them to be the plaintiff or to be the lawyers for the plaintiffs was to find the plaintiff. And I found Eddie O'Bannon. But let me say to you and your audience is I talked to 15, because I got all the names, friends of mine who they probably played in the round ball or the camp or all these things, and they all in a very nice way said no because they didn't want to offend their schools. This was the beginning. This was 2010 or 2011, and Eddie comes around and says yes. So what I'm saying now is the kids are going to win. We've won already because the main thing that O'Bannon did was kill the antitrust thing. But I believe in the near future that you are going to witness a complete changing of whatever the NCAA thinks they are, because what they have been is basically a liar. Because if you go back to the beginning, inside of a scholarship, a young person, man or woman, had to sign the scholarship that they would own the rights, but they didn't know, because anything in my generation and as kids grew up, what did your parents or guardian think? My son's getting a scholarship. My daughter's getting. We don't have to pay. They never looked at the whole 19 pages, and they snuck it in like criminals and thieves, and they did. I know this for a fact. I think North Carolina was the first university to do it, and they lied about it. So I think that you guys someday will report, and I hope you have your own shows on national TV. And I think there are, and also what I've watched are kids like you growing, young people like you growing up to be who you are and what you're doing in your field. But we also have the diversity in the people who are reporting the news, because basically news was stymied. If you go back to Tommy and John in America, in '68, they killed those guys. Tommy and Carlos, they basically had their lives taken away. Now, I know the Muhammad Ali, and I know that a lot of guys went on with their life in other sports, but these guys weren't even able to get a job after that. All that stuff. So we're getting into an era now where these young kids are just doing good. I just saw the young girl that just graduated from Stanford, the golfer.
Yes.
The tournament yesterday. My God, that's brilliant. But going to row, I've been on shows way before this where it was that thing. The girls did the basketball, the Catholic school in Philadelphia. They were the first one, but girls never got recognized until recently. They weren't even part of the NCAA because they hit them. But it took a girl to go to a game 3 years ago and find out that, hey, this locker room's not the same. All of a sudden, we got changed, but they hid it. They hid it for all those years. And so I've lived to watch all this. And I don't want to confuse your audience, but what I'm saying, a lot of people died on the stand putting these kids in there. You all know, and I know, Pam and I were just talking about it an hour ago. If there's a franchise in Las Vegas, LeBron James will be part of that basketball franchise. And that's what's good. Look at this. The kid from Akron, damn,
right? So, Sonny, just so you know, Josh and I have a very frequent back and forth GOAT conversation. And listen, I think MJ's the GOAT, period. I don't think anybody comes close, but I've always thought the conversation should have been MJ Kobe or MJ Kareem. But I love that you speak about all the athletes in the same respect, the way that you just spoke about LeBron, the way that you spoke, that you just spoke about the young lady that graduated. You give all of them the same amount of respect that you do when you speak about MJ. And I love that. That's very, for me to watch that. It's beautiful. And I want to add to this NIL conversation is another thing that the universities would do is they would use former athletes or current athletes to recruit potential students and potential new athletes. The money that the universities have made have not just been of image and jerseys, but just in the recruitment of generations and generations of people that they've used their past athletes for. So yeah, I love that you're on the same page with that.
And I believed in that, most of my life. But as you, young lady, and Josh is saying, as most people say, and even the athletes of today, they never had a chance to speak out. Basically, you know, athletes, you know, in the years I've been around, they've always been camouflaged by insinuations by the elite. You're supposed to be dumb. You're supposed to be this. You're supposed to be that. The thing that really, that I've watched through these years, I've gone through all these commissioners or run the end. I go back to Walter Byers. I mean, it's been a corrupt thing since day one. They basically owned you for you going to their university and earning their money and prestige. They self-pay themselves. I mean, that you can give a commissioner $20 million, like the guy from the Big Ten got a bonus, $20 million. I mean, I've watched this money thing. Then you take it one step further, and I can say this on your program, since I went through the O'Bannon trial, the one thing that we were really proud of was that we uncovered the conspiracy that University of North Carolina, the Yale of the South, actually didn't get, kids had no chance to get an education. They didn't have to go to the damn classes. And the NCAA found them immune from penalties. I mean, you remember that comes out of O'Bannon? A lot of the kids didn't get educations.
Mm-hmm.
They got a degree and they didn't get an education. But that's happened before you two were born. I mean,
that's right.
I'm saying to you, what we had here was a conspiracy and a monopoly held together by just a few people.
Yeah.
A few people.
Mm-hmm.
All these years, the same people or the same mentality of the people running these organizations were the same person with different names. And a lot of them weren't integrated into having different colors either.
Well, it's funny, as a UNLV grad, UNLV is my alma mater, and I think of players like Greg Anthony, I think of players like Larry Johnson, like Stacey Ogman, and the tremendous talent that they had, but they were forced to just be a caricature and never really fully grow into what they could have been. And I'm mad for the players that had to endure that now.
Yeah. I mean, it's I like it. Expose the fraud, Sonny. I love it. That's the message that just came across the board. But Sonny, we've talked about my brother Jerome that played at Georgetown under John Thompson. I know you had a great relationship with John Thompson. You had a great relationship with Jerry Tarkanian. And he would always call the NCAA the slave ship, because when it came down to it, they weren't able to work, so they weren't able to make any money on their own. Unlike other student athletes or just students can go and, have jobs or do other things. But these college players were always kind of bound with their hands tied together.
Well, the coaches too. I mean, there's when Tark was with UNLV and the Lakers tried to recruit him. So I want to say it's not just extended to student athletes, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely progress. I want to see more. I think the NCAA should definitely pay the players themselves as well, on top of any additional monies that these players are able to accumulate for themselves. But I don't want to go too far into college. I definitely, we have a movie star in the house today. So I just want to know from the Air movie, Sonny, what did they get right and what did they get wrong? Like, what were some moments where they might have played it up, and then what were some moments where you're like, that was right on the mark?
It was a movie, and it's not a documentary. So let's just start that, okay?
That's a great start.
I can say to you, and the reason that I was brought aboard just to be a consultant and not to be, I didn't write the script. I didn't have anything to do with picking the players. And Peter Google, who owns Mandalay Bay and the movie, that them and Amazon, wanted me to correct. I can say to your audience and the two of you, there are no blatant lies in there. There are exaggerations of a fact or whatever. The scenes may not have been in the same area that they were, but when you look at it, it was a group of men, that were able to do something that no one else had done with an individual that no one really knew, and created a scenario that changed the world. And then made a family, the Jordan family, and Michael's mother, Dolores, because obviously James had passed away, murdered. So what you're going to see, not I was the only one that could have been totally involved because no one else was ever with either David Falk or Michael the one time at the Romos, and at the last meeting up in Oregon when Mrs. Jordan, when the family came that night, she knew what everything was on the thing. Now this is the beginning now, so just so you understand, and in that little thing that you showed before, if you look at the hat I was wearing, if you go back and show that, and the one Michael was wearing, mine was wearing backwards. The logo, the first time around, was a captain's logo on an airplane, the wing. Okay, the Air Jordan, the Jumpman, wasn't there until Michael and them agreed, and we had to change everything because then we had to start paying them. So there are no lies there. There are exaggerations. There are whatever it was, and I can also say that I did that ending thing. Mrs. Jordan did make a speech. I doubt very much because at that time there wasn't too many things we could talk about. But she did represent the family. She was there. I did make a speech. I've always made speeches. I've loved to talk all my life, but
I love it. I love it.
We do too.
But Matt Damon and and Viola, I mean, they made both of us look good, and I think it was one of the great casts of all time. So just to go back, Josh, to you, that's how it was done. And the two biggest mistakes ever made were from Adidas and Converse. Just think if that happened. Just think. And I only got involved with Michael because Nike was desperate. I never was at that meeting about signing. They had pro guys. They had Moses Malone and a lot of other guys.
George Gervin, who was a good friend of yours as well.
Yeah. So they had to make the move. And when you saw that thing not at the end when we had 17% of the market, well, about 17% of that was 10%. The colleges, you remember,
yes.
George, and let me say this. I don't know how your time's going.
No, we're good. We're good.
We're good.
You go for it, Sonny. We're good. We're good.
If you brought up Greg and those guys, in my whole existence, I was, I supported all our groups. We had ended up winning, 3-4 championships before 1984. We had all 4 teams in the Final Four in Kentucky with Georgetown, Villanova, St. John's, and Memphis. I mean, no one's ever done that before. So we're killing the world. We're killing the world. But what I said, and I've been saying now for a good many years, but never as much since after the movie here, Georgetown, UNLV, and the Fab Five, in today's world, if allowed to be with the players and the teams that they were able to monetize themselves, forget about whoever is the top guys now. No, they changed basketball.
That's
really
right.
Changed basketball. There was, in fact, Tark fought, and I can say this. I knew them and Jerry was one of my best friends. I mean, half of my battles in the NCAA because they hated Tarkanian and I was so close to him. But when I saw Georgetown lose to North Carolina, I didn't give a damn about Michael Jordan. I was there to hope that John would win. That's the irony. I didn't know Dean Smith. I didn't know Michael Jordan.
Michael was a Converse school. Remember, he was in Converse.
So these things and the Fab Five, never has there been, at least in college, a better moniker for a group of players that could have been monetized. That name should have been I wish the hell, Greg Anthony was the smartest. Greg was the only guy thinking on those terms, a long time ago when he tried to do the T-shirt thing and all that sort of stuff. But the Fab Five, what a great thing for a college team, right? I mean, you heard the 4 horsemen, it could have been the Fab Five. But I'm saying,
absolutely love it. That's so great.
Athletes are, the lifeblood, and entertainers are the lifeblood of America's survival. And they give they give Americans who can't participate or sing or dance, can't do the thing that specialities do. They give them dreams and they live their life. And I'll say this and ask me another question. When I sat here and watched Matt, play me on the screen when they gave Pam and I a preview, all I can think about when I was a kid and when you guys were kids, with your parents or somebody would take you to a movie, and that person up in the movie was like, you thought you were him, you thought you were her, you imagined yourself, you're as beautiful as whoever the most beautiful girl was, whoever, Tina Turner, whoever you want to go, right? There are people in our lives that change our lives, and for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 2 hours in a movie, you fantasize. Then you go home, and they drive you. You pretend. And what does athletes do? We go out, we hit the ball, we throw we kick the ball, we hit the ball with the bat, we shoot the ball. We live through them most of our lives because none of us can do what they do. And the movie is the single most thing that lives forever. It's lived because it lives. You don't read the book, no matter how poignant it is, no matter, Diary of Anne Frank. You feel bad, but you don't get the feeling. But when you watch Schindler's List with the same story, basically, you felt the turmoil, the hurt. You see, when you see the people that walk around with bones, that's real in a film. So that that is part of the human mind, to pretend, to want to be, and that's the good thing about athletes.
Well, I want to add to that. For me, sports has been a main player my whole life since I was a little girl. My dad was a pit boss and a bookie, and he started teaching me how odds were made when I was 6, and kids were playing chutes and ladders. For me, I went to my first sporting event in 1984. We were to a Lakers game. To me, sports it's not only such a unified, I always say it's so much more than sports, right? People want to be an extension of something bigger than themselves, and people find it with religion. Some people find it, in various lifestyle aspects. But for me, sports has always been, I want to say, like the main player in my novel or in my movie. And growing up, watching all these athletes and all of the sports, college, pro, just the competition. And I feel like, and we saw it especially over quarantine and, bad political eras, that no matter who you support, no matter what everybody's going through collectively, we're all locked up in our house. We were all so excited to watch sports again. And when the Final Dance came out, I remember just all of us just collectively, we couldn't wait to watch it, right? So sports unifies us, I feel like, in such a bigger way than people understand, and creates generational traditions like tailgating, like cookouts, everybody coming over to watch the game. And this is why I say you can't ever, I don't care what type of AI you have. I'm not that, and I also feel like this is why esports will never get the grounding that actual sports does, because you don't have these generational traditions. But for me, it's our passion, and it's why we do it. And you're right, when we do watch these athletes, I get emotional when I see people win. And I also want to, not talk to anybody when the Dallas Cowboys win. So, it goes both ways. But yes, it's so much more than sports.
It is, go back to just go to Las Vegas and Jerry for a minute, okay? Because obviously I have great ties. Michael Gaughan, when he had the Barbary Coast.
Wait a minute. Okay, I didn't know Mr. Gaughan that well. Okay. Yeah, well, so remember Brennan. So Brennan played with Jerome at Georgetown. So we've been good friends of the Gaughan's for years.
Well, Brennan still thinks he guarded, our guy. Not even going to say the name of it. Brendan.
Brendan was checking. He was D'ing up Allen Iverson in practice. He was, if he tells it, if he lets you tell it, I got to bring Brendan on the show. That's actually really good.
Okay, but just to stay in a point where Ro was talking about, at that time, Vegas was, visioned as, well, they created, what stays in Vegas, leaves in Vegas, all that stuff. They almost made an image like that they wanted you to perpetrate on the world by saying, you can come here and do what the hell you want. And it's now about 40 or 50 years. Now, you may or may not have been. But one of the things I did when I graduated from college is two friends of mine and drove it took us 5 days, I believe, to drive from Trafford, Pennsylvania to Las Vegas. I had to play poker at the Dunes in 1963. I mean, I've gambled most of my life. I quit, after I started working at Nike. But my point was, gambling was something I admired and still adhere to. But just to go to my point with those athletes you're talking about, and going back to Las Vegas. Las Vegas was, by their own acclamation, Sin City. Okay, they called upon. But interesting to me that it doesn't come back, and you two maybe can carry it on when I'm not on the podium. But who came to visit? The ones that will go back home and pretend that they didn't go there, or went there to say what they meant when they said Sin City, right? Vegas has been successful since day one, since they came in from Nebraska and Cleveland and everywhere else a long, long time ago.
That's right.
So that's part of my heritage also. But staying on that period of time, when I mentioned those three teams, there was something also very, very consistent there, very consistent, that I'm going to say on your show. Look at the three teams: Michigan, Georgetown, and Vegas. Most of them were minority players.
Yeah.
Just be honest. Just go through it.
Yep.
It took till 1968 when, Texas Western finally got a chance to play Kentucky, and they beat them in the black-white game. 1968. That's true. That's true.
Yep.
So I'm saying to you and your audience out there, right now, what was verboten when I was running the big time tournament in Las Vegas for 10 or 12 years, basically I wasn't allowed to put the kids in the hotels that had gaming books. You couldn't do that because they weren't allowed. But now they can stay at the Caesars and this place and that place, all the, now they're having the spreads on the wall. You can go in and make all your bets you want to do, this and that. So they do everything. And now they're going to have their own NBA team probably. There's 10 tournaments at the end of the NCAA, right?
Yep, that's right.
They go out and they play the same now, but they're staying in Caesar's Palace and all the ones.
That's right.
See what I mean? The problem with, you're going to hang up, I'm going to hang up, and whoever's listening to the program, I've lived long enough not to forget. So I remember, because we're talking about the same thing: kids playing there, parents going there, and it was verboten. And Jerry, being whatever he was, whatever Jerry was or wasn't, I knew one thing: his kids loved him, and that town took good care of them. You know what? That's what they should have been since day one. They shouldn't have had to be someone take care or buy a meal or go to the hotel and sign your name. They should have been allowed to do that, because you have to at least go back. I know it hasn't been too rosy in the last 20, 25 years, but I'll tell you what, when Tark was there, the town, the biggest people in town, a lot of them running and owning the hotels, a lot of them doing whatever it was all illegal, but it was legal, right? And it was, and it is. Those kids, the Rebels, did a hell of a thing.
That's it.
Yay, go Rebels! I love it.
Now, you mentioned your ABCD camp. That's what you were talking about. Can you talk about? I know that you had the Dapper Dan as well. Can you talk about some of your favorite players from those camps, and then also who are some of the players that you thought were going to become something much bigger that didn't? Like, who would be your all-time list of that?
I won't answer that, and I never will, and I never have, because it's not my not my right to do that, because they went on. What we're talking about, and you asked a great question, Josh. We're just talking about the guy that didn't make the Hall of Fame. That's because most of those guys that they didn't make the Hall of Fame, they didn't win a national championship, they didn't win, the most valuable player in the league, but they were pretty damn good. They tied. What if I tell you that, I knew Patrick Beverly didn't have a scholarship. I picked him for the Dapper Dan, the Round Ball Classic out of Chicago, and he's now played 15 years in the league. I mean, so those guys made it, but they're not going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do that. But I'll talk about one special one because he had, and I have 1,000 special ones. But Tracy McGrady and I are probably the closest because Tracy almost didn't come to ABCD camp because I didn't know all the players at that time. This was in the 90s. I mean, I knew all the players were playing, but I had guys who helped me from cities and little towns tell me who's good, who they miss, whatever. And there's a guy, one of my guys in Florida, told me about a kid named Trace McGrady to invite him to camp. And I would take these people at their word. I have a lot of kids that sometimes these guys miss, they weren't as good, but they're all pretty darn good. So I trusted them. So we were going to take Tracy McGrady. I'd never seen him. I'd never heard about him because he didn't play high school basketball. So so I get a coach at my home. We were living in Pacific Palisades at that time. And this guy called me. He's a coach of the high school that Tracy was supposed to go to. And he said, Mr. Vaccaro, you can't take this kid. You can't put him in ABCD camp. You can't do this. You can't do that. Why? Well, he's a bad kid. His family's bad. People in jail. And I said, blah, 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 blah. So he called me back, and so we hung up. And so I'm talking to Pam, and she hears it, and she says, Sonny, you've never turned a kid down because somebody else makes him bad. This happened. Pam has had 3 or 4 unbelievable things pertaining to my professional life doing with the kids. And I said, you're right. So I ended up, and I got another call back from this guy once I put him in a game saying he's going to roll into camp. He said everything bad you could say about a kid.
Wow.
But Tracy comes to camp, and it's funny, because he was just in Vegas for the celebration this weekend. And he comes, and I meet him, and he's this guy. He had a tough background. So the first day at camp, first morning, wasn't a scrimmage morning yet. They were doing, skill drills and all that stuff. He gets in an argument with a kid from New York. And he goes back on the bus, and the New York kid or Tracy, they're both, we better. I wasn't on the bus, but somebody said, Sonny, you got to get the bus. There's going to be a big fight in the bus. On the first day. So I go back and I separate them and get Tracy. I ride back with him to the thing. So now the camp goes on, the last 5 days. Well, Tracy McGrady, from nobody, almost not getting invited, almost getting kicked out of the camp, is not the best player, one of the best players ever to play at ABCD. He was the most valuable player. He went from this throwing a garbage guy, never maybe to be heard of, to a Hall of Fame guy, married 4 children, had an unbelievable life. I mean, all these things happened, but for the grace of God, it gave him a thing. So I can say Tracy specifically, because it's not that we physically spent a lot of time together. I know how close I came to listening to somebody else and not knowing who in the hell somebody else was, because he certainly didn't observe Tracy McGrady, right? And there were other kids that obviously very close to and gone through. But Tracy's, because he ended up with the ultimate dream, he made the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. I mean, and he's a wonderful person. So, Josh, just to answer that question, and the row help you, what you were trying to say, is such a subjective thing to pick 1 or 2 and then beat the other guy up.
Yeah, I love it. I just before we move off of ABCD camps and everything, I wanted you to talk about both who Benji Wilson was and then also who you thought Len Bias could have been had he didn't tragically pass.
Well, it's interesting. I was personally involved with both of them. So I think you know that. I mean, I knew we were probably going to sign Len to a Nike contract. He was going to go to Maryland and all that sort of stuff. He was at Maryland, and Howard White was, one of the guy in the movie, Howard. Guy, and he was great. So I knew of that, and I talked to the lawyers even after he died that they were suing, all that stuff. So but there's no one in my life. Someone asked me, and I'll say this, a guy asked me a question on one of these kind of shows a year or so ago. He said, who would I like to have dinner with? And I said, Benji Wilson. And the guy like, what? Because you guys know what happened to Benji. So I will say, if I talked about Benji, it was somebody I'll take to my grave with me, because he was the life that was cut short. He was the life that had nothing to do with the circumstances. He was that life that we read about in the magazine, still yet 100 years later. We're walking down the street with his girlfriend, and two guys come up to him and they kill him for some reason. But Benji was, for 5 minutes of my life, I only saw him at the ABCD camp. That was my first year of completely taking over, and it was done in Princeton, and I saw Benji play. He went from non-entity, like Tracy, he was invited to the camp, so he had to be pretty good, to this guy who was the best in camp and unbelievably great. So good that he was the number one player in America, going into the season. The team was going to be one of the top 5 in the country, and it got cut short. And this isn't like, it was more personal to me because I got involved with his mother in a very intimate and grateful way. And I don't know if, Josh, if you know this story. When Benji died, 3 years or 5 years later, a while after, I know exactly, it was the 90s. He died in 84, I believe, 85, something like that. And they made a mistake at the hospital. They didn't take care of him. He stand on the thing that they bring you in on, and he lay there for hours, and he basically bled to death silently, or led him to his death. And years later, this nurse, her conscience got the best of her, and she reported what happened. And his mother was going to sue the hospital and everything. And they called on me and a man named Chris Wallace, who was the general manager of one of the NBA teams, a personal friend of mine, to testify for them on the value of an athlete. Now, just so you know, in 1984, there were no kids going to the pros. There wasn't like, the one and dones didn't start to the 90s. No one was ever thinking, including Sonny Vaccaro, of the kids getting paid in college. But what they set it on, and Cheech and whatever, the two kids that did it, won an award for Benji. But she tells me that she's going to sue, and they needed an expert to say that, you can visually think what the guy's going to do. This is before one and dones. And I want you both to pay attention. I want the people listening to this, okay? I testified and Chris testified. And in my testimony, because I did the contract, the financial end of it, I didn't actually write the contract, for Michael Jordan, and discovered Michael and paid him this unbelievable sum of money, because that's what happened in 84, 85. Same thing. They sued and they won. They won. The guys against us were two people that were major, like, backers of the NBA. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't test. You can't say how good a guy is. Well, probably, without knowing. So when Kevin Garnett does it years later, and all these kids do the none and dones, and then the one and dones, I had an ability to do this without thinking. So going back to Benji, he called me from the payphone. I wanted him to play in the Dapper Dan. By then, I'm in competition with McDonald's, and the kids can only play in 2 games. And I got to know him, and there were letters in those days. I didn't see Benji anymore, and he was going to come, and I, sent a letter to his mother, and there was a payphone. Well, there was a payphone next to that little store, and Benji would call me collect, and I would be at the newspaper doing all my things. I didn't have cell phones, and he'd call me, and I'd call him back, and So I said, Benji, did you send I wanted him to send the invitation in, so the other All-Star games didn't change. I've got it. My mom's going to do it, Mr. Carey. We'll have it by. It was Thanksgiving week. They were going on vacation. I mean, the high schools, schools were closed for the holidays, and he got killed. After that, the day after, the guy killed. So I never talked to him again. I never saw him again. But his mother won a landmark case. I followed him with his mother. He had a brother to his mother. Later on, she got married again. They weren't married. So Benji, at that time, they were high school kids. and he died in an accident. I stayed close to his son. Went to ABCD camp. I invited Benji's son to ABCD camp. There is a personal tie that I'll never forget. So when I say the vacuum in my mind is a vacuum that I never really got to see or know or hear.
Yeah.
So that's the sad one.
Yeah.
That's the sad one.
Well, look, listen, Magic Johnson with a jump shot is what they called him. What'd you say?
Sorry.
Oh, no. I said Magic Johnson with a jump shot is what they called him, and that is one of the tragedies. I did want to also ask you, as an elder
5 more
statesman.
minutes. I got to do something else. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, what did you say? Oh, 5 minutes. Oh, okay. No, not a problem. Not a problem. We'll get you out on a last couple questions. I did want to ask you, if you had a message, because you have this just vast, limitless, experience. What would be some words of encouragement or things that you would tell John Morant?
Well, that's the easiest thing in the world. Believe in yourself. Have your aspirations, have your dreams, but believe in yourself. I mean, let me real quick. I'll give you the standard thing. It'll raise eyebrows to your audience. I was a small school. I wasn't going to go to college and a lot of things. I was going to go play baseball. I thought for Pirates, all that stuff. So forget about all that. But what I can tell you is there was a small town in Pennsylvania, 17 miles east of Pittsburgh. There were a lot of people who wanted me to give me scholarships, but whatever. Then there were 53 people in our class. I graduated third from the bottom of my class. Sure. But there was one thing, I don't know what would have happened, in my other life, but I can tell you this. Of all the things I was able to do in my life, the only job I applied for, ironically, I didn't apply because as soon as I graduated, they hired me, but I was a teacher of special education. That's what they called special, education at that time, restricted learning now, however they. But I just believed in myself. Now that doesn't mean it's going to work out, but if you believe in yourself, whatever it is that self takes you to, be prepared to do. But don't shortchange yourself, because most people give up the chase at the first no. They do. It's a human thing. I mean, I can't prove it, but I've seen enough. I've seen enough of it. This happened. I ain't going to go there. That ain't going to happen. So believe in yourself, and I don't think it's braggadocio or this or that by being proud of saying where you came from, what you went through, who helped you. I think that's a positive, because if we forget, whether it's mom and pop or the whole family or guardians or teachers, then you will lose your way, because once you forget where it started, you'll forget and you won't know how it's going to end. I totally believe that you don't have to see me. My friend don't have to be your friend for you to be my friend, Josh and Rob. You got to be mine. If you like somebody else, it's a very hard to do that I wouldn't like or something. Get past it. Get past it. Just do what you want to do. Don't let that somebody else rule what you're doing, because somebody, I firmly believe that we're all not going to be the greatest player on a team, but whatever. But there are situations that I've watched some of the athletes turned on because of pride. It used to be like the last thing in the world you want to do is go to Europe, right? And play basketball. Yeah, that's pretty damn good now. But let me finish with this, and for maybe Roy's last question, Josh. Let me tell you, who I'm most proud of all these years is the advancement of what the girls have been able to do.
Yay.
The girls have been able to make this human. And most of it started with the sexual part of it. Going back to the gymnasts. That crazy camp they had in Texas where all the great gymnasts were being molested, and it goes to the University of Michigan, and it goes to the boys thing that happened in Ohio State.
Yes.
I think the women have done more to promote the advantages of where the men are today. And if that little girl, not that little girl, she must have been a sophomore, junior, the girl that exposed the NCAA by not having good facilities in the basketball, they were second. I mean, the NCAA didn't acknowledge them as being part of the NCAA and the Final Four.
Yeah.
And did it knowingly. Ladies and gentlemen listening to it, boys and girls listening to this, let me just tell you something. The NCAA has wronged athletes no matter what color, what nationality, where they're from day one. They had one goal: to pad their pockets, make sure that everyone involved with them did well. They didn't grade. And the saddest thing I can ever report, as far as if you weren't a great athlete, a lot of kids got a degree. They never got an education. They never got, the ability. And let me say this, because they used to say that about Tark and the kids there. I can bet a dime to a donut. If you didn't go to pros, if you didn't get a good job or doing whatever they did or did not do, the city of Las Vegas, were plenty of jobs. I've watched a lot of these kids that played ball there do well, working in the casinos, working for people affiliated with the casinos. Las Vegas, through all the whatever, loved the rebels, loved the kids, and paid back. Paid back. I like that. I like that about Jerry. I like that about the city, because it still does it. But the most thing I like about it is that these kids today have now got opportunities given to them by some of them being stabbed or beat up. They got there. I want these guys to keep, girls and boys, to give back. Give back. Okay.
That's it. Ro, did you have anything else before we let Sonny go?
Yeah, I need to know something. And this is something when Josh sent over a show flow, it's the question that I've been wanting to know forever. Were you the man behind Antoine Walker's I Make Baskets number 8 employee commercial?
I was so close. He slept on our couch. I'm talking about Antoine. Antoine was one of my favorites. He was one of the ones that went early with Kobe and Tracy and Jermaine, that whole group. That was the first group I signed for Adidas on our road back. And if they would have done something with LeBron, I may still be working with Adidas. I might still be working. I'm not working for you guys. What made you think of Antoine of all the guys? What made you ask that?
Because Antoine Walker to me is one of these players that unfortunately the youngins won't get to really appreciate or know about or really know much of his story. And I don't like that. Well, I mean, there's a ton of athletes, but for some reason he is one that's always stuck out to me. In terms of grittiness and heart and what he's contributed to culture and sport.
I'll tell you why I asked the question is because Jerome was supposed to go 8 to Boston, and then it didn't happen. And so whenever we used to watch that commercial during Pistons games, I used to get so pissed off, and we used to make so much fun of I Make Baskets. And so that was like for like years, anytime we saw Antoine Walker, that was like the running joke in my household. I'm sorry.
Well, I just say that with my uncles, like literally, like whenever one of us did something right, my cousins and I would always get in trouble. And the one that didn't get in trouble would say, I make baskets. Like just.
You pulled that one out of the hat, so to speak.
Well, Sonny, we truly appreciate your time. We truly appreciate you coming on the show today.
Very much.
Any friend of our show is now a friend of us in real life. So you can call me anytime, Sonny.
Me too, Sonny. Me too.
I'll listen to you, and look, we would sit here and talk to you all day because I know you have stories for days.
Let's do that. Let's get past the summer here. Sometime in the fall, okay? Call me up and let's do a show.
All right, brother.
Would love that. Thank you so much, Sonny.
We'll have you back, Sonny. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Okay, for sure. I'm going to walk away and Pam will shut this.
We love Sonny. All right. Well, man, Sonny Vaccaro, we got to talk with a legend. This was everything that I thought it would be and more. So.
And just gosh, the word icon and legend is thrown around so easily in today's day, that when it truly applies, it doesn't have the impact. But the man we just spoke with is a true icon.
Yes.
He single-handedly changed the culture. So to a big degree, you can thank him for the Air Jordan brand.
Air Jordans, you can thank him for, all the college. He talked about college, and, when you go back and you really think about what the Big East meant to college hoops in the 80s, all of those teams wore Nikes. All of those teams wore Nikes because of the man that just was on this phone. So
wow,
that just leave it there. You can leave it there. You don't have to say much more than that. That's pretty dope. That's pretty impactful. Like I said, man, we're gonna keep building this thing. We're gonna keep building it. George, I wish you were too far away. I couldn't get to George. Be like, George, you got a question? Throw a question in there, George.
I'm so glad you didn't ask me, bro. No, he's not a. I mean, I'm just not there yet, Josh. You got to forget. I'm 24 years old. I let the veterans handle this, okay? Respectfully.
Fair
you guys
enough.
How did you feel listening to him, though? It was like, do you?
Oh, I mean, I was not expecting a 20-minute rant on how good UNLV was.
It was the round we all needed, though.
My alma mater.
I knew that both of you guys would take some pride in that, and I definitely wanted to talk to him a little bit about Jerry Tarkanian.
You know what I wanted to ask him so bad?
About Tarkanian not going to the Lakers?
No, well, that too. I wanted to ask him.
A good question.
I wanted to ask him if he watched Winning Time, and
okay,
and if he did. If there were,
you just start continuing to unravel from what he said.
I have, but specifically about that one scene, because I didn't know about this, and I thought that I had a pretty good grip on most of the history. There is a scene where the Lakers basically signed Tarkanian, and they got him to leave UNLV. And then somehow, I believe it's one of his assistant coaches ended up in a trunk.
No.
Who was it?
It was like just his friend.
Oh, that's
that was like,
or his bodyguard. No. Yes.
Well, at least on the show, I can't remember because I know I googled it after the fact to be like, did that really happen? It was like, yeah, nigga, that really happened.
That really happened.
That really happened. My man was in a trunk, like.
I was at Spaghetti Western last night, and I was speaking to two gentlemen that have a long history
of trunk stuff?
No. Well, no. Not that I know of. But they are a big part of this city's history. And I asked them about it, and they both looked at me and without even blinking, they're like, "Yeah, that was true."
I stand by what I said.
But I was dying to know if Sonny watched Winning Time and what his thoughts were on it.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good too. That's pretty good too. Do you want to talk briefly about
the game?
Just the finals.
Yeah.
Maybe give it 5 minutes and then we'll get out of here. Because I know I don't like cutting up anything more than an hour and 5 minutes.
Oh no. That Sonny stuff is gonna be.
Oh my goodness. He was giving so many stories. I'm like, didn't know that story.
Didn't know that story.
And if I didn't know it, I know a whole bunch of other people didn't know.
Just to clarify, was he the expert on the trial? Is
yes.
that what he was getting to?
Yeah.
One of them, yes.
Yeah. That guy, and you know what? I think I do remember that coming out at the very end of the Benji 30 for 30. I think I do. When he started talking about it more and more, I was like, I think I do actually remember
I love that you asked him about Benji and Len bias. Like I was really proud of you for that.
Oh, no. I mean, look, we got to talk about certain things, and there's certain things that literally just don't exist or don't exist enough. And there's certain people that lived it that can speak and attest to it that the rest of us, we kind of just can throw it around, but we weren't there. There's certain people that were there.
Really quick, you know what I loved about him in the very beginning? He was talking about, like, when I was growing up, I'd read these books because he's like, my wife and I are both very singular people. We like to take in our own information. And that is something that is lost today. We are not allowed, well, I'm always myself all the time. But I think that we are thrown so much information. We get into scrolling rabbit holes. We take in we like all forms of media. It's constantly throwing information your way, and you are you know inevitably sometimes read the comments. So there could have been something that you really really liked, but then you read 200 people say no, it's trash, and now you're doubting yourself. I hate that. I hate that today's media has the ability to take people's opinion away from
Personal
them.
choices. Yeah, that's fair.
I really can't stand that. But talking about trash opinions, let's talk about the finals.
Okay. All right. So I mean, look, listen. That fourth quarter, it was a game of runs, really. And I sat in a Denver Nuggets sports bar in Denver. And, the energy in that sports bar, it was so funny because, as I've said, I've been cheering for both sides. I haven't really been, too high on either team. So I was able to clap for the Nuggets. I was able to clap for the Heat. I wouldn't clap too loud for the Heat, but still like, good pass. Nice shot. Like little
Nuggets
stuff.
Fans are weak.
Little
they wouldn't
stuff.
have done shit.
Oh, hey, listen.
They were too high to care.
No, it was so funny. Bam, they were too high. Oh my gosh. Going into that game, like it was like a funeral. It was so interesting interviewing fans. Like it wasn't like, we're in the finals. Like it was like literally like
because they're
walking,
all sedated.
They were that's literally what my cameraman was saying. He was like, don't worry about them. They all high.
I'll tell you what, and this is something that Georgie has spoken about, you and I have spoken about. We talk about it constantly, especially when it comes to what are the keys for this team in this game. So it ended with Jamal Murray throwing for the three that he missed at the buzzer, right? And this is how many times through this, not just, not this year's, but the playoffs overall, we have seen teams that just are risking it all, like Melo off the Henny when he saw Rihanna with those threes. It's like, just like, especially if you have a clear path, just go for the layup and tie the game.
Well, they were down 3. They needed 3.
Oh, that's right. They were down
last
3.
one, the
but
last
you missed
possession.
Well, no, you could have gotten the layup and possibly a foul, right? So to me, it's like,
okay.
You could have gotten that in the end one.
No. That's not
it's just
misguided
like
for
this,
sure.
This 3-point culture is losing games. I mean, if you're to think about it, I think Jimmy Butler had only 11 points last night, but he went like on a hot streak in the fourth quarter. I think it was either 13 points or 11 points. But during the game, like during the first 3 quarters, he took a handful of threes and that were missed.
Yes,
so
you couldn't buy one.
You couldn't. So it's like these threes are murking your souls.
Yeah, hey, listen, I will say Murray was hot down the stretch. And it's me as a coach, so it's tough because we all, hindsight is 2020. We have the ability to have outside perspective actually after it happens. And in the moment, I can tell you that entire sports bar was ready. They didn't want them to call timeout because, like, you know what I mean? In the end, it's like, oh, you missed the shot, but it's a make or miss league, as they say. And he had just hit like 3 big shots.
Yeah.
So it was like, and then that step back, that's kind of patented for him. He's shown it over and over again in this playoffs. So I didn't hate the shot, and it rattled in and out. So it wasn't like it was too big of a moment. He just missed it.
I just feel like so many games have hinged, not even like buzzer beaters, on 3-point attempts that have gone wrong.
For sure. And back to your point, there was enough time, especially if they pushed, to try to get a bucket and then foul and extend the game.
He could have gotten a bucket and foul.
They had 2 timeouts left. Both teams had 2 timeouts. I only know that because one of the people at the bar asked, and I was like, oh, both teams have 2 timeouts. So that's the only reason why I remember that. But they both had timeouts. So you're right. You can extend the game. Like, drive, especially because that's when the Heat might let you just have 2. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I just love that they beat. I love that they beat Denver. In Denver, and they had and all these people that are like, yeah, the Heat are gonna get swept. They're gonna get swept. They may not win. By the way, I said this on my IG, and I will say it just for the record. I have the Heat winning in 7, and so I am doubling down on what I think. How can anybody say this team isn't going to even win one game, given that they killed the Bucks and they killed the Celtics, right? So.
Sorry, George.
No. I mean, listen. At least my team got swept. I mean, at least Georgie's team.
And they fought back.
They fought back.
And George and I cut up that episode, and I was like, I gotta make sure George has this clip, because you were going in, but you were like, all we need is one chance. We just need one. I was like, oh, that's a good clip.
Listen. It's been stated multiple times. The Heat is made up of losers this year. There's plenty of just losers. Last night they played like winners, and that's what happened. Versus, they can show it in, like you were talking about, spurts.
Yeah,
I think it was finally the Nuggets, the way they played defense game one. I'm surprised this should have happened game one. Like
they had the same shots. It was the same wide open shots. Wide open shots. They started hitting them.
I don't know, but you know what I love about Spo though? He's never predictable.
They were 17 of 35 from three yesterday, so almost 50% from the 3-point line. I think the Nuggets were 11 of 28.
I think it's coaching. You never know what Spo's going to do. He's not predictable, and he gauged game one, saw what was happening, and also before game one, if you even looked over like to Charles and Shaq and Kenny and Stephen A, they're all getting oxygen. People forget what that altitude does to you. So now they've had a few days to
acclimate, as you were saying.
To acclimate to it. Their nutritionists, their trainers, all acclimated as well, right? And now they get to go to Miami, where Spo said, you know what, we'll go play in that altitude, but they got to remember, they got to come back to Miami and play in 90 degrees and 100% humidity. And I can't wait till they make that arena hot as balls.
So one thing my cameraman was telling me yesterday was actually he's very afraid of that first game in Miami, because what does tend to happen when you go from altitude to basically sea level, because Miami's a beach city, you go from that distance that quick, the other team, they will be on like rocket fuel.
I hope they put them up at the Clevelander next to a block of rooms of kids that are that are on summer break. Like it's like their first green apple martini by the mile all night.
Like it literally will
just
not
like when the Giants were in the hotel room and the hot water went out in Philly. Fuck you. So I hope they put them up at the Clevelander, and I hope they're bed bugs.
Oh
Udonis Haslem is going to send like some of the finest Russian girls to Jokic's room. Like,
not UD.
I know what you like, brother.
Not Russians.
Oh my, yes, right, exactly, right. Oh my gosh. All right, well, we can get out on a prediction for Game 3. George, who you got for Game 3?
Heat culture. They're gonna. I think it's gonna be a very slow-paced game. Like we've seen them turn it up a little bit now. Defense is getting good. This is where we're going to see like a 95-89 finish. I have it Heat winning, low score.
Okay, all right. Ro, who do you have?
I have the Heat winning by 7 points.
Okay, all right. I'll be at the game. I won't be inside. We're working towards that. NBA, we're working towards getting inside. I saw the tent yesterday, and my cameraman was like, "What's this tent? Is it like a little?" I was like, "Yeah, that's for the overflow for media." I was like, "That's the next step for me, and then the final step is just walking in the building." So we're gonna get there. For those of you in Miami or in Florida, shout out to you. I'll be at the game. I'll be out front. We'll be filming. I'll probably be on South Beach at some point. Sorry, Ro. I know you want to be there.
Dude, get into Red video. Like, if I don't see you, like...
Red. So, Red is actually in Dubai right now. Red's birthday. Oh, crap. Red's birthday is today. So
Happy birthday, Red.
I need to make sure I hit him up and say happy birthday to him. But
I want to go to South Beach.
I know.
I need a vacation so bad. If anybody wants to sponsor one for me, I'm really I really need one, and I'll take one.
What's your
GoFundMe link in the bio?
No, GoFundMe. Just DM me, and I'll give you all my shit.
Whoa! What are you giving up? What are you giving up?
I mean my Venmo info and all that good stuff. But I do listen. At this point, I am open for sponsorship for a vacation, and no, you can't come.
Literally or figuratively?
Both. I want to be on a boat eating fruit with my titties out right now. I need a break.
And then my mom signed off the chat. Miss Williams has exited the group.
I'm sorry, Mrs.
We
Williams.
almost made it a full episode.
I just need to be one with nature right now, okay?
we almost made it. We were this close. Well, thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the American Fan 365 podcast. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe. Please make sure you follow us on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify as well. Wherever you get your podcast, we're growing that network as well.
Download our episodes. We're funny AF, okay?
Yes. Download them. Keep them. This one for sure. Download this one. There's gems in there. For everyone, whether you're a sports fan or just a fan of life. So,
you guys, thank you again for tuning in. We love yous, and until next time.
Fan, short for fanatic, is the one who's screaming their lungs out in sub-0 degree temperatures, still believing when the chips are down, and never, ever giving up on their teams or their players. From the closest seat to the worst one, we want to meet you all. This is the American Fan.